There's billions of dollars on the table here for companies.
This is a way to get back from the government. Why not take advantage of a program that's going to put more money into your company to make it easier to grow and develop? Welcome to Machine Shop Tech Talk, or welcome back to Machine Shop Tech Talk if it's not your first time here. What we're going to dig into today is something called SRED. You might have heard people say SRED. When the first time I heard this, I was like, I don't know what these people are talking about. Are they having a hard time saying shreddies? But it's okay because I've got my guest today, Andre, and we're going to dig into all things SRED. Andre, so glad you can make time joining us.
Ever since I was little, maybe 6, 7, I was playing with Legos. So my route to mechanical engineering and kind of tinkering with stuff was almost natural. That plus my passion for the environment. And then one of the things as I was doing work, I realized, hey, because I was working for a fridge company, we were doing some things in the lab, and I had the opportunity to help them develop something on the thermofluid side, and we were able to claim shred. And ever since, I was kind of looking, wow, there's so many more things that are applicable as scientific research and experimental development than I really think. So that kind of paved uh, my starting point with my mechanical engineering and shred experience. So I'm happy to share whatever I can offer.
Okay, so you kind of gave us the name breakdown of what
Yeah.
SRED is. You said scientific research and what? Sorry, I already forgot the last two.
The second, just experimental development. So
Okay.
if a company has something that the simplest way to look at it is if you can't Google your way out of it, and if you're, for example, a machine shop and your own internal knowledge or something you can Google or other machine shops around you or
Yeah.
maybe don't have an answer for that, and you kind of have to do certain trials, and you document, hey, you tried this and then this didn't quite work, but because you're obviously not going to be tinkering on company time unless there's some clear goal. You're going to want to get a little bit closer to a
Yeah.
solution. A lot of that work ends up just being eligible as that kind of second part of the shred acronym, which is the experimental development.
So if
Yeah.
they're experimenting on a process or some sort of outcome, or what did you say? You were doing fluid dynamic stuff, there's experimentation involved, then it could be possible. So what do you think companies are missing then when it comes to the shred stuff? Like what are they missing out on?
Awareness is definitely a big part of this. I would say out of 10 people that I've spoken to about this recently in the last half year, about half
Hmm.
of them were not aware of it. So definitely tackling that is a big part of the solution. And the thing is, a lot of companies, if they do know about it, they seem to think that, hey, it's you have to be doing extremely for example, hardware development, like Nvidia is doing with their graphics chips, or something with necessarily cancer research. For example, like AI processes to find cures for certain protein synthesis problems. Of course, all of that is eligible, but that's typically under the scientific research portion. I mean, it could also be under the experimental development portion. But things that are obvious for shred, they're usually shred, but there's a huge slew of things that isn't necessarily obvious, and that's kind of what the gap is, I think. And also, it's also kind of a problem in that they might know about it, or they might think it's too complex to even deal with. But maybe we can touch upon that.
Yeah, well, that's a great transition because the next question I had down for you, I was
Oh,
like, is it complicated? Right? Because I think it sound like for me when I first started the conversation with you, it sounded really complicated. But the more you talk about it, it's kind of starting to see like it's actually more manageable. Is it a super complicated process?
it doesn't have to be. It's a
Okay.
process that I think I would still kind of recommend in general for manufacturers and for companies, for tool shops, if they can work with at least a consultant or an agent on
Mm,
it, that would help them ease some of the final stages, for example, the filing, the costing. If a
yeah.
company is very kind of already has experience with it, it's possible to do it. But the overall process for the client, it doesn't have to be as complicated as it seems. It really comes down to kind of several questions that they can ask. Hey, what are the goals that I'm working on? What am I trying to kind of close?
Yeah.
And if I'm hitting a roadblock where I can't just Google my way out of it, or company knowledge my way out of it, and I have to do certain trials and kind of assess outcomes, look at maybe analyze between certain outcomes so that you minimize the number of trials you might have to do, then you would be eligible for shred more than like, as
Hmm.
long as you're also a Canadian company and that you've kind of paid your employees in the last year or two through T4s or something, like a legit, not just dividends, for example. That would be a little bit trickier to claim. But if it's
Yeah.
typically a company that has already paid their employees and they ask themselves these questions, the most important and probably simplest is, did I have to experiment to solve this because I couldn't Google my way out of it? And then that
Yeah.
that really opens the door
Okay.
for claiming.
Yeah, and that it's I like that you're like because that we're touching on it again, but you actually already answered my next question. Should you work with a partner to do it yourself? But I think it's clear now from what you just shared that yes, if it's your first time looking at this, you should reach out to someone that's already gone through the process, some sort of partner to work through this, which is the same thing like if you're a machine shop adding a new machine tool. You would reach out to an application engineer, the first machine, especially the first machine tool you bought, right? If you're putting a new tool on the shop floor, you're probably talking to an
Yeah,
application
that's right.
engineer because it's your first time using that new tool, right? So it's just SR Shred becomes that another tool in their toolbox where they could gain some money back to reinvest in their company and actually, be rewarded for the work, the experimentation, the development that they've already done.
That's right.
Um, so, do you have a story around this, maybe that people could relate to that had surprised you about Shred?
Oh, there's a few things. I mean, I think even the first ones is just how much more stuff is really eligible. Of course, it would have to be on some level, technical, and some level of either engineering or software or something. Either biomed, not like marketing or humanities. Those are kind of the exclusions, for example. Unless, like,
Okay.
even for marketing, you can find certain aspects if you're, for example, developing a new AI pipeline with multiple approaches that you're not just chat GPTing it, but you're
Yeah.
combining this with other systems, your own internal data, maybe pulling the data a little bit, uh, in a novel way. That's one of the things. So a lot more stuff
Okay.
is eligible than you think. But the other thing that is even more important is when people hear about it and they hear that it's related to tax, they think that, oh, we're going to get the 20-30% money that we spent on tax back if we're eligible fully. But really, it ends up being something like 50 to 60% of the salary that you spent on your employees last year. So
Oh.
if you can really claim, if you can prove, and that's where you would kind of work with a consultant, that the work that you've
Mm.
done, you really had to experiment, to justify the experimentation, or the analysis.
Yeah.
You end up getting something like 50 to 60% of, let's say you paid your senior machinist 80K or 100K, you might end up
Yeah.
getting that much, especially if you also have kind of an engineer oversight, and then
Yeah.
all of the machine work becomes supporting work that's also eligible. So the percentage is quite a bit higher than you think. And you could say what you want about Canada and whatnot, and some of the states of, let's say, money not being spent in the absolute best way possible. But when it comes to shred, it's existed for a long time and it will continue. The whole point of it is to not have to outsource the labor to outside countries. So you almost keep it inside.
Hmm.
Yes, the Canadian government, along, regardless of who the prime minister or whatever is, it understood for a long time that it's often cheaper to go to China or other places to outsource labor. But
Yeah.
if you, or even in other more Central America or something, but if you can do it here, and you also end up innovating,
Yeah.
one out of 1,000 of them might end up being the next Canadarm. But even if they're not, it's still knowledge that's innovated within the Canadian sphere. They want to
Yeah.
reward that to make it
What?
a little bit easier.
Yeah, and I love that, right? Because I'm big on bringing more manufacturing I always say North America because there's so much synergy across the border with the US. Obviously, with Shred, we're looking at Canada specific stuff right now, but I want more manufacturing here. So to know that there's a government program that actually rewards companies, this is valuable information for the people out there watching or listening or however they're consuming this. So I have a question then. Like, let's say the company's listening right now and whoever they might be, because there's a variety of people that listen, but if they're looking at this, do you think there's any benefit to reaching out to a consultant like ahead of time? Like, hey, we really want to start working on this, to figure out what they need to gather for documentation to kind of set themselves up, or just because I'm thinking if you go into it at the end, you might have to like try to do a lot more work trying to figure this stuff out. So, is there any benefit, do you think, to planning ahead for this if you want to have like a shred kind of year?
That's a fantastic question. It would definitely help to have some access to a consultant. It wouldn't
Okay.
be as heavy after as it would be afterwards when you're actually doing in terms of the filing and whatnot. Not to say
Okay.
that it should be heavy there anyway. Like kind of one of the things that I've been trying to do is just soften that process for the
Yeah.
client, because let them do the R&D and not have them do this extra homework to come back to you know
Yeah.
the money that they would obtain. You want to minimize the amount of homework, but part of
Yeah.
that would definitely benefit from speaking with a consultant beforehand as you're planning, so that you can, yes, you can do things like tracking a little bit more effectively.
Mm-hmm.
There's actually certain groups of people outside of myself. There's another group of people. They're working with TrackWorks software. A great group of people. They're helping on mostly on the um, evidence gathering side of Shred, so that
Okay.
to smoothen, in case it does also help with the planning process throughout, but then it also helps smoothing out in case you get audited. So that would be
Mm-hmm.
kind of part of the discussions with the consultant throughout the fiscal year to help. Uh, I mean, of course, do the work that's eligible to plan a little bit, but it would not be as maybe once a month you'd have like an hour talk with just with the business, just to make sure that you're on point and not missing anything. So it
Okay.
definitely helps in some regard. And consultants, like for example myself, I would only obtain a percentage at the very end after everything's filed and CRA then gives the money back. So
Okay.
um, some consultants, I think they might take upfront, like hourly, uh, during consultation, during the agency work of submitting and whatnot, once everything's done, and then a percentage after. In our case, the consultations would be free, just because you know it's almost like the whole we don't get paid unless you do, and that
Yeah.
allows us to do the absolute best work, because then it's almost like we're in this fully together, because we want each other to succeed, and it's not just like a day job. It's you know a passion for development, basically.
Well, yeah, and when you set it up that way, I love that. For the record, it's what the whole reason I invited you on, man, right? Because you told me that, and I'm like, dude, we got to talk about this. More people need to know about this.
I
But it,
appreciate that.
and I want to make it really clear to the people listening that this is because I had this misunderstanding, and it's not something you apply for and you get the money ahead to do your research. That's not this kind of fun. This is something where you track yourself across your fiscal year and then you apply at the end of your year and you get a reimbursement from CRA. Do I have that right? Like, do I finally get it?
Yeah, that's right.
Okay.
Keep in mind
Okay.
that reimbursement, if you were very profitable as a company, like, and then you owed a lot of taxes, for example, then this would just help you, close the taxes, and then whatever you have in
Hmm.
excess, you would get as a reimbursement. So it could
Okay.
kill the tax debt of companies, but that's still the same thing from the perspective of like the work that we're helping the company, because before they owed
Yeah.
taxes and now they don't, maybe they have a little bit of excess. If the company ended up being a little bit less profitable than they'd like, they might end up owing less taxes. So in those cases, companies end up getting the full or near full amount of the credit. I mean, it's called a credit because it could either
Yeah.
be It could either be used to pay against debt slash taxes and other things, or if it's in excess, then it becomes a cash amount that you can literally do anything you want. Of course, the company, you'd want to put it back into the company or to your employees. But
Yeah.
yeah, it's certainly helpful. It's non-dilutive. You don't give, because it is in a way a government program, but it's not a grant, in that it's not ahead of time. It's
Yeah.
like you said, in retrospect. So
I love it too. Well, one, because the way you consult is, look, if for some reason we go through the process and you don't get paid, then it's not like they owe you anything. It's not like they got to pay a retainer fee every month to work with you throughout the fiscal year, which I think is absolutely beautiful. But it's also, when we started at the beginning of this conversation here, and we're coming full circle to wrapping up right now, it's the fact that this is money that a lot of companies out there are leaving on the table, and they're not getting back when they could be taking advantage of this. Um,
that's really painful. Yeah, to me,
yeah,
that's part of why I want to
yeah,
help as many as possible, because like this is a big program. And so I'll say this, that and this is quite rare, but some companies, they like the limit per claim is about 3 million in
okay,
terms of how much you can get back. I mean, most claims are not going to be in that range. You would have to be like a
no,
big, like, biopharma company with a bunch of drugs, or like manufacturers are typically in the 100 to $500,000 range.
which is a nice range.
Yeah, yeah, and then on top of that, so that's per claim. But keep in mind that the Canadian government, I think last year there may have been something like 20 or 30,000 applicants, and
Mm,
they gave out, typically for the last couple of years it's been about 3 billion per year.
mm-hmm,
Last year I think it was a little higher at like 4 billion. So I mean, I think if you were, I don't have the numbers on this, but if you were to tap into every single non-claimed manufacturer or company, doctor even, like this works for, that's the other thing, like doctors with their own little, research projects and what. If you were to tap into this, I think it would probably be in excess of, 6, 7 billion if you were to access all of this. So
yeah.
there's billions of dollars on the table here for companies, and it's just
Mm-hmm.
it would really help boost the economy in Canada, and more importantly, just develop solutions that benefit everybody.
Well,
It's amazing when you think about
well, and the passion there for you is clear, right? For anyone that's just listening and they can't see your face right now, it's on your face, dude. Like, this is something that's very, very important to you. And I love it because it supports more manufacturing and more engineering done here in Canada, which, that's a beautiful thing. And it's government money. Like, we all spend our lives paying taxes. Everyone's got their own feelings about that. This is a way to get back from the government. Why not take advantage of a program that's going to put more money into your company to make it easier to grow and develop? Why would you not want to take advantage of this?
it.
So I'm so grateful, dude, that we got to have this conversation and that we get to share that with everyone out there listening right now. So, for everyone listening, I'm going to put contact details to Andre in the comments. He's going to send those. Thank you so much for being here. Is there any one last thought that you want to share with people before I hit stop record?
It's been a pleasure to be here,
Yeah.
Arthur, and I really look forward to speaking and meeting some of you to help you do your work better.
Hey man, it's $0 up front. They would be silly not to investigate to see what's possible. So make sure you check those contacts down there. And to all my machining friends and machine shop friends out there, keep your spindles turning and earning.